Good evening and welcome to our special board meeting on this Tuesday, January 18th, 2024. It's 7 p.m. and we have quorum, so I will call the meeting to order. Item 4, question period. Questions from the public.
Hi. Is this working? Chris Eustace, Mr. Chair, thank you. You may recall at the last meeting, I didn't get a chance to ask the second question, which dealt with special needs, and I was hoping that Mr. Katalifos would have answered that with the help of the administration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read my two questions out, which you've got in English from 3 days ago and in French today. All these questions have been copied to the members of the National Assembly and to the premiers of Canada and their ministers of education. So question one is, quite a big deal has been made by the minority language group here, and the key words are manage and control. So my question is, would President Ortona manage and control the public question period in the same way as for parent committees of the EMSB and Lester B and its council? And also note that there's about a few commissioners absent right now. They're online, but I don't have that right as a member of the public. So question one, would you please answer that? And question two, school board elections are coming up in November. Apparently the vice chair is being bounced out of his position. I've checked the ethics code of your EMSB, and I've also been attending the meetings here. I see nothing that he's done, in my opinion, and in fact, he has apologized 2 or 3 times at the last month's meeting for maybe being, let's say, too democratic, but nothing untoward was made towards any particular individual as far as I'm concerned from what I saw. And to that end, I'm going to support him if he decides to take further action. So my question is this: why don't you consider postponing or reconsidering reconsider this transfer, for lack of a better word, rather than use the word whatever you used last time, removal of. Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you.
I'm sure I've got some time left over, so when you answer, I'd like to have a follow-up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eustace. So, your first question is about the management and control and how we conduct our meetings and our question period. I've stated it before and my answer hasn't changed. So all of our bylaws, including our internal rules of how the procedures, you're shaking your head, Mr. Eustace, but...
I'm shaking my head for a very good reason.
Okay, I'll ask you to put your microphone off, please, so that you can hear the answer and the public can hear the answer uninterrupted. So we are currently in the process of revisiting all of our bylaws, including the bylaw on the internal rules of management of our procedures, including the Council of Commissioners meeting. So everything is being relooked at. Until such time as something new is passed, we're going to continue to conduct the meetings the way we've been conducting them since 2019, which is the rules and regulations that the trustee put in place and under which the trustee was also running the meetings. And until such time as the bylaws change, they will be followed. For your second question, I'm not sure what you would be asking us to reconsider because the vote took place last month and the resolution was adopted. So there's nothing to reconsider. And you're out of time, Mr. Eustace.
Oh, I can't have a follow-up? My follow-up is that your first answer is nothing more than a pile of nonsense.
Mr. Eustace?
Answer here, the second question. You switch off the mic. Cows come home. All you're doing is comparison yourself and, as far as I'm concerned, the school board itself.
Your time's up. So the next item on the agenda is question period. Do we have questions from the public? Good evening, Mr. Eustace.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd like to first, I'll keep this under 2 minutes. I want to thank Mr. Merck. I want to, pardon?
Before you begin, Mr. Eustace, at the last meeting, I've had to remind you of this several times, and this is going to be the last reminder I give to you on this issue. You're familiar with the rules. You know our rules. I think you know them well since you quote them in numerous emails that you send to hundreds of people. Mr. Eustace, at the last meeting, you proceeded, after I answered your questions, to refer to my responses as a pile of something, I don't know what. I shut your mic off before you were able to finish. This is going to be my final warning to you, Mr. Eustace. You've become increasingly belligerent, hostile, argumentative, and inappropriate in your tone and your demeanor here at our council meetings. And you know that you have 2 minutes to get your questions out, and then I get to answer the questions, and then you don't get to critique the answer or give your opinion or argue or represent your views. It's question, answer, and that's it. And if you're unwilling or incapable of abiding by those rules, Mr. Eustace, as I said, this is the final warning. And if you don't abide by those rules, you will be escorted out of the building. You will not be allowed to come to question period anymore. And if I have to do that, I will not answer your questions in writing either. I hope I've made myself clear. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. The word I used, by the way, was, I didn't say pile up anything. I said not the word nonsense. I want to thank Mr. Mercury for giving me some water, and Madame Lozier for lending me her pencil, and for Teams for opening up the bottle because I wasn't strong enough to open it. At any rate, the 2 questions you've got, and so does everybody else, including the Premier of the province. The first question is, what is preventing you from allowing Zoom meetings of the public? Is it the Constitution? Is it the Education Act? Is it the Charter of Rights of the Quebec, which you're flanked with? Is it the Canadian flag there, the Charter of Rights there? What is it, not to mention 4 court rulings saying that you can manage and control? So what is preventing you from allowing Zoom meetings? I'm finished question 1. I'll do question 2 right away.
No.
Question 2. Well,
No.
you're done
with
is that part of the 2 minutes?
I'll answer question 1. Okay?
Yeah, but are you going to count that as part of the 2 minutes?
My answer? No, my answer won't count as part of the 2 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So nothing prevents us from doing that, Mr. Eustace. I've never alluded to the fact that there's anything that prevents the public from participating on Zoom. I've been quite clear. In fact, the Director of Legal Services had written a response letter to you outlining all of that, and nowhere was it suggested or alluded to in any way whatsoever that there was something preventing us from doing that. The Education Act is quite clear that and we have a bylaw to that effect, that you can have a bylaw that allows, in certain circumstances, members of the Council of Commissioners to participate. Doesn't use the word virtually, but basically to participate virtually. It makes no mention about members of the public. And in spite of the fact that we conform to the law, since the Education Act says that members of the public who are present at a council meeting are allowed to ask questions, and we obviously do allow that, as you're aware. It makes no mention of the fact that we have to provide for a question period for people who submit questions in writing. It doesn't do that. It doesn't say that anywhere. But we do that because we understand that it may be inconvenient for some people to be present in person. So for those who cannot be present, we allow for that. We don't allow the public to participate virtually. That's where we are. I've never said that it's the Constitution or anything like that. In fact, what I've said was, and this was evidenced by some technical difficulties or situations that could arise when we had our Bill 40 info sessions or our Bill 96 info sessions, and in fact, one that we had regarding the pandemic very early in 2021, I believe, where we had hundreds of people who joined online, and it created some difficulties. We also would have to control who would be able to enter in and out of those meetings. There are occurrences sometimes in a Council of Commissioners meeting where we have to go in camera, which means that the public would have to be let out, and then how would they know when they can get back in? So it's something logistical, and to be quite honest, the only person that has requested that in 3 years is yourself. So there is no demand from the public, the parent community, or anybody in the school community of any kind. So I just want to be clear that that it's not a question of the Constitution. It's not a question of it's impossible for us to do so. There's some logistical issues to it, and there's no demand for it. What's your follow-up question, Mr. Eustace?
My follow-up question is why is it that the Parents Committee can do it by Zoom of both school boards, Lester B and this school board? Why is it the governing board that I attend can do it by Zoom? Why is it the Lester B. Pearson School Board can do it by Zoom? And Mr. Ortona, I'm not going to take up any more time, but I cannot thank you enough for that first answer that you gave. Here's my second question. And that deals with, which I wrote here, apparently in last, excuse me, Mr. Coleman at a Vitality session that we had at Concordia said something about a big meeting coming up in May. I also heard by QESBA, I also heard that from a parents committee, but I forget which one. Then I heard it from a third source and I forgot that. Two questions. Can you give a title to that QESBA meeting? It's not the QESBA meetings that you have up north. It's not that, the conference. What is the title of that? And what will the public be allowed to attend that meeting? I think it's going to be in late May sometime. That's, ask Mr. Copeman. Oh, I asked Lester B about it, and they said check with QESBA. You are Mr. QESBA, Mr. Chairman. Please answer that question, and then I'm finished.
Thank you. My name is Mr. Ortona. So I'm sorry that, but you're going to have to get more clarification on what you're referring to, because I honestly don't know what meeting you're referring to, so I can't give you a title.
Oh boy.
I'm not sure what meeting you're referring to. Okay?
This is very, very serious. Thank you very much, Mr. Ortona. You don't know anything about what I'm talking about. I suggest you speak to other people as well. Okay, have a good evening all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Item 8, business arising out of minutes. Is there any business arising out of the minutes?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Canavino.
Yeah, I have 2 points, thank you. On item 8, you mentioned at the last meeting that in your report that some boards would be making financial contributions to challenge Bill 96, and you told us that you would provide us with numbers and statistics and which boards would be contributing. Is that information available, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. So Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board has made a contribution, will be making a contribution of $15,000, and the other boards that have joined will be making a contribution of $7,500 each.
Okay, and I understand that Sir Wilfrid, yes, Lester B. Pearson will not, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. My second point, if I can continue, Mr. Chair, is on item 7, or point number 7, with regards to the removal of the chairman. I'm a little bit concerned on the comment made by the chair of the Ethics Committee during that debate, when he said that the process to remove the vice chair was political, which is very concerning because, as I said, the matter should have been referred to the Ethics Commissioner, but rather it was decided, and I think that, you know, you were amongst those people that decided, Mr. Chair, that judgment would be rendered for political motives. Now, what concerns me most here is the credibility of the chair of the Ethics Committee and the decisions made by that committee. Because if he makes such a comment, I'm very concerned because, first of all, he made some decisions on that committee. As a committee, he made himself chair of HR. Contracts were awarded. In fact, lately, the bylaws to be reviewed by a legal firm were given. I'm questioning myself what process was used to select that firm. And, you know, my question is simple, Mr. Chair. How can the chairman of the Ethics Committee, after having publicly admitted that the process is political, keep his position? In my mind, ethics and political do not go together in the same statement.
Oh boy. Thank you, Mr. Cannavino. First of all, Mr. Feldman did not appoint himself to any committee. Council of Commissioners, through a vote, appointed him as the chairman of HR. Thirdly, I think it's like the third time that you say that the removal of the vice chair should have been referred to ethics. I'm not quite sure where you're getting your information. I can guarantee you that it's erroneous. Nowhere does it say that that's the process that has to be followed. The Education Act is quite clear on that. And I'm curious, Mr. Cannavino, when there was a removal of the vice chair in 2018, which you were in favor of since you voted for it, when did you ever speak to referring that matter to the Ethics Commissioner? I have a pretty good memory, Mr. Cannavino. The answer to that would be never. So
well, because you were involved in that process, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cannavino, please do not interrupt. I didn't give you the floor to speak.
No, but I would like to ask my question.
Mr. Cannavino,
you're deviating from
Mr.
my question,
Cannavino,
Mr. Chairman.
if you're not going to stop interrupting me, you'll be removed from the meeting. That's the way this works. You speak when you're given the floor to speak. So in 2018, you never made such a reference to refer that to the ethics. It's quite curious that now that it involves you, all of a sudden the rules change.
It's not the rules change.
Mr.
Can I ask
Cannavino,
my
you
question
do
now?
not have the floor, and the next speaker is Mr. Feldman. So the next item on the agenda is question period. Any questions from the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Eustace. I'm a retired teacher, excuse me, with a great-grandchild who attends an EMSB school. Excuse me. On the way here, I heard that Bill 21 is going to be passed, or some ruling is going to be on it on this Thursday. Just so you know, just in case there's any misinterpretations here, I'm also against Bill 21, as I wrote in my brief and letters to the Gazette and the Suburban. I'm sorry for my voice. That's the COVID vaccines. I did receive the Code of Ethics of QESBA. It took over a month to get it. I got it about 5 o'clock today. And I wanted to mention something about that. And about the conference, you may recall, I asked you, Mr. Chairman, in front of everybody here, if you knew anything about this conference that was coming up that Mr. Copeman talked about in November. You knew absolutely nothing about it. Yet, sure enough, last week it came out that the conference is going to be in May sometime. That I hear voices, I don't know, it's not mine. It's good to see that there are people, that there's a hybrid meeting. It's too bad the public wasn't allowed to do that the same as other boards. At any rate, since I got the ethics Code of Ethics. I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, how much, and I wrote this question last month, how much does the QUESBA get from the government in terms of funding? It's for expenses. A general number is good enough. Like I know you get taxpayers' money, but how much does the government pay?
Mr. Eustace, I seem to have to repeat myself every month, at every meeting, and at every question. I know that I'm the president of the QESBA, but this is not a QESBA meeting. This is an EMSB board meeting. And if you have questions about QESBA, they should be directed at QESBA. Point in fact, I know you said you've been waiting a month to receive the Code of Ethics, but I'm copied here in an email that you sent.
That's right.
To the QESBA
That's
today
right.
at 7:38 a.m.
Yeah.
asking for a copy of it. So if you received it today at 5.
And I've been asking that for...
Mr. Eustace, please don't interrupt me. I think that that's quite expedient. So if you have specific questions like how much is the government funding QESBA, I don't have those figures for you here this evening. Because when you submit questions to the Secretary General, part of the reason why we ask that the questions be submitted in advance is because if any questions are asked that require research to be done, rather than have to defer and say, sorry, we don't have an answer for you live, whether it's the Secretary General or a regional director or a director of a department, it all depends on the question, we have the question ready for question period. But you're asking about government funding to the QESBA. Secretary General is not able to get that answer for you, nor is anybody else, nor do I have that off the top of my head. So please refer your question, as you did in an email here that I saw this morning at 7:38 a.m. to the QESBA.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Chairman. This is my follow-up. I asked that question last month. The Code of Ethics business, I asked for a month. In fact, you all got copies of it. Most of you have.
What's your follow-up?
What you are doing, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Eustace, I'm not taking comments.
Well,
if you have a
this is the
follow-up
comment. You are
question-
misleading people.
Mr. Eustace,
Have a good night.
if you don't have a follow-up question, sit down, please.
My follow-up question is,
You just said,
why did you misinform the public about not knowing about the conference when Mr. Coltman
Mr. Eustace,
said something about it last November? In fact, what really happened was that you pretended I was sort of crazy. What are you talking about? And you knew all along. Mr. Ortona, your conduct is deplorable as the chair of this board. Good night.
You don't have the purview of coming here and insulting people. So I will ask you to please leave.
I did not insult you.
Mr. Eustace, you will please leave, and I will not permit you to come back. I've put up with you and tolerated you for as long as I could, but I'm not going to have innuendos and insults be hurled and baseless accusations. You asked without specifics about a meeting. I told you I didn't know anything about it because I didn't know anything about it. In fact, I still don't. So I don't know what you heard, where you heard it from, and quite frankly, because of your conduct, with all due respect, I'm not really that interested. So you may stay for the rest of this meeting, but you won't be permitted to come back because I won't take questions from you in the future, and that'll be all.
Speaking of doing other things, I'm pleased to publicly announce that the QESBA and its partners in the English Education Network, including parents, teachers, school board administrators, in-school administrators, and the Quebec Community Groups Network, will hold a 2-day conference on English public education in April of 2024. The aim of the conference is to strengthen the vital link between the education community and the wider official language minority community and the society it serves. Share knowledge and develop innovative ways to make the public education system more effective. Questgren's own Lorraine O'Donnell sits on the program committee of this conference. Perhaps some of you will consider attending.